We spent the day at Tech Talent North Toronto, which was organized by TAP Network that took place last month on October 24th. I sat down with many HR leaders in the Canadian tech space to talk to them about what they're thinking about and focusing on in their work. Here is what they had to say. Check it out.
Okay, I'm Jeff Waldman, the host of the Unmuted podcast, and so we've been podcasting here all day at the Tech Talent North conference, saying hi to everybody that walks by. And this is the annual Tech Talent North conference in Toronto. They also run it in Vancouver as well, usually in the spring, summertime. So I've been speaking to a lot of HR leaders, talent leaders, practitioners, and so here I'm with Megan Woerlein, who's I don't know what your title is, but she's at Amazon.
Yeah.
And I heard that they have 2 million employees, 1.8 million.
We do. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of them.
It's like a country unto itself. So, so Megan, thanks for being here. I know that we've known each other, for a long time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Going back many years. So makes me feel old. I'm not speaking for you.
Just you.
But you have two small kids, and my kids are a little bit older, but my oldest one graduated high school. He's finding himself. Anyway, so obviously HR has been at the forefront of business for the last 3-4 years.
Yeah.
I'm sure you probably agree with that. Mm-hmm. So what are you seeing? Like, what are you seeing currently? Maybe something that's come to mind that you've been working on with Amazon or not that people need to be thinking about going into next year?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm actually the HR leader for the Amazon advertising business for one of our science businesses. So it's an incredible part of the business to be a part of. It's a growing part of the business, but there's a lot of focus on it, obviously. And so I would say for me, I've personally, I don't know if this is for everybody, but I've personally found it very stressful to be a part of HR in the last 3 or 4 years. I think since the kick of the pandemic until now and, into the foreseeable future, I've found it's just been one sort of reactive issue after another. Sort of, there was the pandemic and then there was, massive attrition and compensation issues. And then we moved into layoffs, and everybody went through that. And so I have personally recently just started trying to take a step back and think about, okay, what's next? Because I'm tired of reacting. I'm exhausted by it. I'm overwhelmed by it. My business is overwhelmed by it. Like our inability to be able to look around corners, not our fault when it comes to the pandemic and sort of everything else that happened after that. But now that we're moving out of that, what do we think people are going to do next? And I think that that's something that we haven't really thought about in HR before because we were used to sort of steady state before. And then the pandemic upended all of that. And so now we really need to think about what the behaviors are that we're going to see from people next. So I'm thinking personally, my prediction is that people are right now sort of sitting pretty in their jobs in tech because they're worried about getting laid off, because they want some sort of secure footing after so many years of insecurity. But I predict that that's going to be short-lived over the next year or so. And so I think that we should all be prepared for a lot of tech talent to start to move around now. And so my goal personally as an HR leader right now is to try and not be reactive to that. It's like, how can I plan for that? How can I anticipate what that's going to mean for my business? But how can I make sure that, we're not just running scared because of another shift in employee behavior or another wave of employee behavior? Like, how can we start to look at it proactively?
So that's really interesting because you talked about something about, HR obviously being, tired and burned out, I guess, the way of looking at it. So I was speaking to, some people earlier about that very topic is that, not only is HR tasked with leading, organizations through all of their stuff in the last years, but they themselves are also human and are having a hard time struggling with, exhaustion and burnout and, whatever it might be, stress, your mental health. And I think you talked about being proactive versus reacting. That's pretty hard to do.
It is.
So, I mean, you work for a large organization. So, so how do you, I guess, move that monstrosity of a whale organization going from a reactive to more proactive?
It's almost a balance, right? So there always is going to be those reactive things. There always is going to be those daily fires, like the sort of perceived reason for HR being, like that, we have an employee issue over here, we need you to react to. So there's always going to be an element of that. But I think, becoming proactive means you have to be purposeful about it. So you do have to carve out specific time every single week to think. So Amazon actually has a very explicit doc writing culture. So you can't do PowerPoint presentations. You actually have to sit down and think through all of your ideas. And in order to write those documents, you actually need to carve out space and time to do it. And so what it forces you to do is think about okay, I'm not going to write a doc about what I'm doing today, because that stuff is just reactive. What I'm really writing my docs about is the stuff that I'm thinking about in the future and how I'm going to build in purposeful time. And so while you don't have to have a doc writing culture to do that, you can actually just do that on a regular basis. Right. And, you'd be surprised, I'm not sure if I should give this advice officially, but maybe I should, you'd be surprised at how many emails I don't answer and how after a few days people solve those issues themselves. You'd be surprised at how much you're actually not needed when you stop being the one who's answering things.
That's a really good point, actually. Going back many years where you're absolutely right about that. So you're speaking today. Mm-hmm. So what are you talking about?
Well, I'm talking about, something that I alluded to in the beginning, which was, that I think that we're about to enter the era where, tech talent is basically going to recycle itself amongst the companies. So I think, you'll see Amazon talent move to Uber, which will move to Twitter, or X now, I guess it is, and Airbnb and so forth. And you'll see this within scale-ups and startups. And I think why it will have such an impact is because now we've sort of been in this mode of recovering from layoffs. And I think that we think that we're in that mode now for a while. But if I have learned anything over my last 20 years in tech, is that, our tech workers move as fast as our tech companies, so they will suddenly get an idea that they should be doing something, and they will move, and companies will be happy to have them. And so, I think people practices need to evolve to that. And I'm not suggesting to be reactive. So I'm not suggesting to run out and try and engage and keep everybody. I'm suggesting to acknowledge what tech talent is going to do, because over the last few years, we've been trying to fight this wave, don't leave us, don't attrit, don't freak out about layoffs and et cetera. And I think instead the response needs to be, okay, I have an idea of what you're going to do. So here are the things that I'm going to build into my HR toolkit to deal with it, not to push against it. And I think the pushing against it is what is so overwhelming for HR professionals.
100%. And I think, this is really interesting because there's so much movement and so much change and things change every day. So I know that a lot of, my clients, people, but I work with always tell me that you plan for today, but then, tomorrow's a brand new day and it changes. And they're right. But then I say, but you need to have a plan so that you can actually work from something. If you have nothing, then you've got nothing to fall back on, and you lose that connection to, the business. And obviously, Amazon being a large organization, they probably have a pretty well entrenched planning cycle and, how, that all works. It's not always true for a lot of the smaller tech companies, but, I look forward to sort of seeing your talk and, obviously it's great to see you again. It's been a few years. Let that make it another couple of years. So Megan, thanks for talking to me. Megan Woerlein of Amazon, based in Toronto, which is the tech capital of Canada. Even though I'm from Vancouver, Vancouver's still home to me, but Toronto sort of where it's at. So thank you for tuning in.